Okay, so it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again. Because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. So there are two types of people in this room. Look around. Look at the person behind you. Look at the person in front of you, the people next to you. There are those who are in the arena, and then there are those that are on the sidelines, mostly. Because no one's always in the arena or always on the sidelines. We're there sometimes, and other times we're not. Sometimes we're in the arena in one part of our life, but not in the arena on another part. And how many of you are like me and have found yourself sitting on the sidelines at some point in your life, looking at the people inside and thinking, man, what am I doing wrong? Why is that not me? Well, for me, I feel like most of my life, the way I've been perceived by others has not always been the way that I've perceived myself. As a child, I grew up on welfare. My father is an incredible soul, but he fell into the wrong places. And he ended up an alcoholic and drug addicted. And it had gotten so bad at one point that there were some dealers who had threatened the lives of my mother and my sister and myself because he didn't pay on time. And those aren't people you don't pay on time. As a child in high school, I was constantly trying to fit in with other people. I found the richest people in my high school, and I wanted to be like them. So I found ways to make myself fit in. I found jobs working for aunts and uncles and neighbors where I would clean their apartments like gold, in their cars. And when I got to the point where I was actually an adult and able to hire a maid service for myself, I realized, wow, I cleaned way better than any maid service actually does. So I took all of the money that I had, and I actually had a whole procedure for how I would buy clothes. I would go with the most classic things that I could wear, jeans, basic shirts that I could wear one time one week, and then later that next week and not be noticed that I was wearing the same clothes twice in 1 week. I would never go with the styles or, purple pants or something because people would notice. Hey, she wore that twice. So I stayed away from those sorts of things, really tried to make myself fit in. When I went to college, I went to New York University. It was about 5 hours away from where I grew up, and I decided if I was going to make it big, I was going to go and do it all out. So I went to New York University, the most expensive university in the nation, with my mom giving me all the emotional support she could, but being honest that there's no way she could support me financially. I got there with $30, which I didn't tell my mom because the bus ticket home was $40, and there's no way she would have let me stay. And I had a Barnes & Noble gift card, and I would go to Barnes & Noble every single day to buy myself the $1 bagels because that was the way I could get food for the little amount of money that I had. And I pushed on until the point where I just realized it's not going to work anymore. There's no way it's going to work. I had another tuition payment coming up. I was down to the last couple of dollars on my gift card, and it was just, all right, it was over. I was going back. I had tried. I had dared. And I thought that something would be there to help me along the way if I really put myself all the way out there. But there was nothing left. And I finally gave up on hope. And I cried myself to sleep that night. And the next morning I woke up and I did the only thing I knew how to do, which was to do what I had been doing. So I went to my class, I went to my job, and that day I was pulled out of the class where I was mentoring a little girl. And the reading specialist said she was starting an after-school program where she was going to bring in master's teachers with their teaching certifications and everything. But she wanted me because she liked the way I worked with the students, even though I was a 17-year-old undergraduate freshman. And she said, I would like you to come teach in this program as well. And I was so honored. And it was so painful to have to say no. Because there was no way, I didn't even think I was going to be in New York in a couple of days, or if I was, I sure needed to get at least 2 more jobs to support myself. And I was so embarrassed I couldn't tell her this. So I said, well, I'd love to learn more. And she told me a lot more, but all I heard was it's $40 an hour. And I just stood there and I said, what? Oh, I think that will work. That sounds great. When do we start? And it was that, the universe kind of coming to my aid at the very last point, at the very point where I thought there was no more hope. And it was from that I was able to meet my husband, create my future business, and live the life that I'm living today, because I pushed on one more day after I had lost the hope. But this whole experience of my life has really given me the opportunity to meet so many different types of people from so many different walks of life. And the one thing that I've really noticed from all of them is that no matter what the external experiences are, whether it's the person you're walking by on the street that's obviously vagrant, or if it's the amazing CEO who inspires you to no end, all of these people at their very core are so similar. Like Gia was saying before, the fear of rejection is there in all of us. The ambition, the desire to do good, the desire to connect with people, the fear of failing, it's in all of us. And sometimes we look at the people that are in the arena, the people whose face is marred, and we think they're different, they're not afraid. But the thing is, they are. They're afraid and they're going on anyway. They all have voices, and I've been reading this really great book. It's literally the best book I've ever read. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff about pushing past your vulnerability, dealing with rejection, I recommend writing it down. It's called Daring Greatly by Brene Breen. She calls them the gremlins, these voices that we have in our heads, the gremlins. And whenever she thinks that she's not going to step into the arena, she says, well, what are the gremlins saying? And the gremlins will say things like, well, your presentation's really interesting, but Gia was so much more funny than you. They'll go off and they'll say, that person taking notes on their phone, they're not actually listening, even if they are. These voices tell us all sorts of things. And I think it's really by kind of stepping into those voices and accepting them, and accepting the darker sides of ourselves, because they are true at some level, those voices. They are true, but there's also beauty in that. And it's only when we know our darkness and we can accept our darkness that we can be present with the darkness of others and feel that compassion. The compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. And that compassion is what gives us the strength to go on and to step into the arena. It's also our genius. That's, I think, the first step to getting into the arena, is to know that those things that we're afraid of, those dark parts of ourselves where we feel vulnerable, where we feel like people are going to judge us, that's where our genius is. And it's only when we can put that out there, and we'll always look at other people being vulnerable and putting themselves out there and think that, they have genius, but if I put myself out there, mine won't be recognized in the same way. But really, I think most people have probably done a tour of Zappos or have an idea of what the culture is there. It's genius. And it's not genius. I think a lot of people, when they go through, they say, okay, license plates above the desks, got to do that, got to get everybody decorating their own thing. We need to, as a CEO, I better be serving lunch to my people every once in a while, because that's what Tony does. And I think that's Tony's genius, is that he created it for himself. That the genius is not what is actually done, but it's actually putting yourself out there and creating the genius around you. And that's what attracts people that appreciate that way of being. So everybody's culture, everybody's genius is going to be different. We don't need to copy someone else's. We need to create our own. And I think that's step number one, appreciating what ours is. The second step, I think, is really looking at things in a new way. So when we think about why we appreciate someone, do we appreciate them for their successes and their failures, or do we appreciate them for actually daring? I personally have deep respect for everybody in this room. But it's not because of what you've achieved or what you've failed on. I don't look up at you because you've succeeded or down at you because you failed. I appreciate and respect you because you've dared. And it's that daring, I think, that's really what makes the difference. If you've seen Elizabeth Gilbert's talk on TED, she's the writer of Eat, Pray, Love. She talks about how in Roman times, genius was something that was seen as a disembodied element, like little elves running around. And so if you showed up, that genius would be there in one way or another. And if you showed up and you succeeded, it was because you had awesome genius surrounding you, and it was really great. But if you showed up and you failed, you know, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't you. It was just that your genius was a little lame that day. So, I mean, think about that. Can we just show up? Can we just be there and just appreciate the fact of being there and appreciate that in others? I think if we can start looking at other people that way, that will give us more of the strength to step out there and really be ourselves. So, so that's what I'm excited about. I mean, when I started off, I said that there were two types of people in this room. I think, you know, there are those that are mostly in the arena and those that are mostly on the sidelines, but those things switch up at every single moment. When we come across criticism, we could have been in the arena and we step out. When we get inspired, we can step in. But every single moment, we're faced with the opportunity to either be in the arena or sit in the sidelines. And that choice comes to us multiple times a day. So I'm really excited to be here on this journey with you. I'm really excited for all of the unique things that we can contribute to the world, each and every one of us. And I'm really excited to see all of that genius unleashed here in Las Vegas and all over the world. So thank you. Oh, questions? Yes?
So I'm curious, where do you think your strength and your willingness to dare, where do you think that comes from?
You know,
that journey is not easy.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think a lot of times we think of like difficulties and you know, difficult, challenging circumstances as something that can hold us back. But a lot of times I think when we're challenged, we often overcompensate and feel like we really need to push out. And I think it was the situation I was in as a child was so frustrating, and I wanted so badly not for it to be that I got very ambitious. And the you know, possibility of not trying, of not giving it my all, was so much worse than actually doing it, even if I failed. So I was willing to go out there. But I think we can kind of all find something like that, something that, what is the thing that we're here for more than, that matters more than looking bad? And then that's the thing that can propel us forward. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And I applaud you on your dress because you obviously did that paradigm shift.
I was going to mention, I would have never worn something like this back then. Good catch.
You're in the arena.
Well, thank you.